Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome y'all to our presentation of Court Trends, the next 10 years narrative, or next 10 years, I'm sorry. We have from Maricopa County, Philip Knox. Peter Key. I'm asleep, I'm sorry, don't worry about it. And we have John Grayson, is it? Greason. And so I'm going to turn it over to them. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
One last time, we'll put up the instructions to get to Poll Everywhere. Thank you very much for coming today. We've already been introduced. We've been studying the future of the courts now since about 2012, and we're going to spend a little bit more than an hour talking to you about some of the results that we have found from 5 surveys that we have sent out over the last number of years on various scenarios on the future of the courts. But as Phil has already said, before we start, I want to advise you that we do have this is a very audience interactive session. We not only accept your questions and your comments, this program actually doesn't even work very well if we don't get a lot of audience interaction. So please do not hold back. We know you won't. We'll start off by saying we all predict the future. If you're going to am I going to bring an umbrella to work? Or, since we live in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm going to bring sunscreen to work? Am I going to bet on Michigan State to go all the way on March Madness? Oh, maybe. Or am I going to let my kids go out with those sketchy friends of his this Friday night? We're all predicting the future when we do that in one way or another. And our courts predict the future too. We all do it. Even when our courts say, we've always done it that way, which means the way we've always done it is the way we'll always do it, and it's always worked out before, so we're predicting the future that it's going to work out into the future from time going on. So we all predict the future. Today we're going to try and talk a little bit more about some different ways to take a look at the future.
All right, thanks, Peter. Oftentimes when we plan, we look maybe a year out. Whether it's in work, we might do actually 3 years strategic planning or 5-year strategic planning. I'm going to give you in a few minutes a little bit more background of the impetus or the genesis for this project. Mostly Peter's idea about 5 years ago. I think it was right about the time of the Orlando conference of NACM. And we're going to give you the opportunity, as we have our survey takers over the years, to look out 10 years. And when we do that, we don't want you to look out to what you think or what you hope, but what you actually think is going to happen based on all of that goes on in our work and our lives. And we hope that you're going to go away from this today with some idea on how to better plan. We gave you, for example, and we're going to go over our instruments that we use, but we gave you also a site to go to track some of these things. And at the end, we're also going to ask you to sign up maybe and be included on future surveys. A little bit more on the background. As you heard, it started about 5 years ago. And the approach we've taken is to send out a succession of surveys to court professionals. The whole idea in comparison is, rather than ask a few experts who aren't really in the field, or even a few experts in the field, our preference is to get a broad view of things and then narrow it down and almost average it out, and that's what you're going to see. We've done that with over 1,000 separate and different people so far. There has been over actually about 1,700 people take these surveys, but some of them have taken it over a few times. The surveys have gone out to superior courts, to federal courts, to professionals in the AOC, to limited jurisdiction courts. Respondents have been asked to predict the likelihood of a series of scenarios, and there are actually 140 different scenarios now. Obviously, we have a limited amount of time in this hour to present these. what we've done is we've captured 3 of those that we thought might be of some real interest to this group. Just to think ahead, we've got self-driving cars. We're going to talk about those today. Those have been in the news actually recently. Talk about e-tickets, and then a little bit more on case management systems and the vendor case management systems actually. And then we average these responses, and we come up with a number system that you see here. So to look at that, highly likely, if someone's given this survey, they may say give something a score of 1. Obviously, they're believing that whatever that scenario might be is going to be highly likely that it happens. On the opposite end of the continuum on our left, if they give it somewhere around a 4 or better, it ends up on that end, and we would suggest that it would be highly unlikely based on surveying professionals in the business. So we're going to ask you today some of your opinions, and then we'll warn you that we're going to look out. We want you to look out, again, 10 years, and not only what you think or what you want, but based on everything that you have as information available to you, whether you think something's going to be likely or unlikely.
That, John, you'll introduce the first set of snapshots.
The first set of snapshots asks the question, will self-driving vehicles be commonplace within the next 10 years? There are automobile companies and software companies that are investing billions today on this topic. Why? Because if it happens, it's going to be totally transformative. That there'll be dramatic improvements in safety. Automobiles are more dangerous to us than firearms. Kill many more people. And the idea is that self-driving cars will eliminate this death by vehicle. Also, that if cars drive themselves, then we won't need to own them because they'll come and pick us up. And the cost of that would be dramatically reduced. The reason we have congestion, the traffic engineers tell us, is the way people drive, not the relationship between the quantity of road and the quantity of people who need to use that road. If we can eliminate human drivers, our current highway systems will be fine. And we also won't need our garages at home or our garages downtown. But this will not only require that we come up with self-driving cars, but that we outlaw people driving their own cars, because the two will not mix. Google is now working on this totally no human car. Tesla is going the other way to be a driver-assisted car. So Tesla would have us rely on having a human driver, but having the automated system as a backup. And as we all know in the news, Tesla has admitted that a number of months ago, one of their test drivers was killed. We have 2 scenarios of the future. Carlos Esqueda will give one of them, followed by Matt Pendy. Carlos?
Matt, why don't you both come up? And I think, Matt, you're first.
I'm A.
You're A? Go for it.
Carlos is first.
All right, so Dateline, Monday morning, January 5th, 2026. I am Carlo Esqueda, clerk of the court for the Midtown Municipal Court. The trends have been clear for some time. Even way back in 2016, car companies like Mercedes-Benz, Volvo, and Acura were building cars, albeit expensive ones, that actively braked to avoid accidents. Backup cameras became law in late 2018. By the early 2020s, long-haul trucks had self-driving functions for use on superhighways. Car companies solved many of the common road hazard problems drivers face in an unpredictable driving world. Now, by 2026, traffic citations, traffic accidents, and traffic arrests have plummeted. Traffic deaths, which reached a peak in 1980, have continued to decline, and thousands of lives have been saved every year. The downside for my court, minor traffic is no longer the behind-the-scenes revenue engine that it once was. Traffic court business just isn't what it used to be. Some interesting sidelights, though. Drunk and impaired driving is down, since the drunks aren't technically driving the cars. State legislators are grappling with the question of what constitutes an intoxicated driver if the vehicle is self-driving. I'm glad society is safer, but honestly, I'm scrambling for funding like I've never had to before.
Hello, it's Monday, January 5th, 2026. I'm Matthew Pendy, Clerk of Court for the Midtown Municipal Court. Just like hoverboards and personal jetpacks, self-driving cars sounded like a grand idea just a decade ago, but the reality never lived up to the hype. Some of the technical improvements were made and some of the vehicles were made safer. In the end, however, the public all realized that the computer would never replace a rational human being behind the wheel, and that led to a negative impact in public trust and confidence. In 2016, car companies were building cars that stopped before a distracted driver would react. Despite many refinements, self-driving cars never overcame several real-world hurdles. Self-driving cars got better at driving in bad weather against some type of unpredictable driving, but they were never perfect. When an accident occurred, the public always blamed the driverless car. Finally, self-driving cars couldn't make the spot moral decisions. Do you run into the light pole or do you hit the toddler that ran into the street to get his ball? Although tickets and accidents are down, human drivers, human error, and traffic courts that handle human mistakes are still big. Our court's business and our court's revenue stream is still pretty secure.
Okay, thank you. We're moving towards your opportunity to make a choice.
Oh, sorry.
So to summarize,
Yes, I know. I'm trying to summarize here. Where is the thing? There. Ah!
all right.
You've already.
To summarize, snapshot A, if you want to weigh in that snapshot A is probably more likely to happen. Car companies are investing in the concept. There are already many safety devices on vehicles. Traffic cases will plummet. Laws will have to change. As opposed to snapshot B, safety improves, but the fad fades. Too many logistical hurdles, like bad drivers and bad roads, and traffic filings remain constant.
So feel free to vote for A or B. Are we good?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. I'm gonna ask you.
Yeah, we didn't take a head count, but we've got 40 people or so that have weighed in. But does anybody want to be brave and offer why they chose A? Okay, over here, Peter. Were you going to go to them? For B? We're
We
good
wanna
with
hear
that
it.
too.
I'll tell you why I chose B. I chose B because I think it'll become an independent liberty question. I don't think people will allow that to happen because, quite frankly, people enjoy their vehicles. If we can't get firearms out of people's hands, we're not going to get vehicles out of people's hands.
Okay.
Who else thinks it's an independent liberty issue?
Yeah, but cars are not part of the Second Amendment.
That's true. They're not.
But they are part of the pursuit of happiness.
Okay. I did vote for A. I'm a technology guy, so I'm going to vote for A. But another reason that I'm going to vote for A is I have a 15-year-old, and he just got his learner's permit, but out of all of his friends that have already turned 15, he's one of the only ones that has a learner's permit because nowadays kids don't want to drive cars. And so they see the Ubers and they see self-driving cars and think, well, why the heck do I need to learn how to drive? And I agree that my generation, it'll be a cold day before you get me out of my fast little convertible. But at the end of the day, I think the new generation that's coming up, they don't care about, with Facebook and all, they don't care about privacy. They don't care about liberty. They don't care about anything. They just want to know how's the quickest, fastest way I can get me from my involvement here to me to my other involvement over here, and to heck with everybody else.
Very good.
Thank you, Casey.
Other comments?
Any other comments, whether you picked A or B, as to why you did or what your thoughts are? In the back, Peter, on that side, in the back.
There we go. They run around there.
I picked B, basically because, I mean, when it comes to a spur of the moment decision that needs to be made with regards to safety, although I'm like really down with technology and everything, I just don't feel comfortable with the idea of a car that just has a mind of its own. So it's like, you know, when you're in a spur of the moment type situation where you have to make a decision about something as to whether you run the red light or not run the red light, or as was mentioned in the scenario about hitting a pole or hitting something else. I mean, it takes a human to be able to think about that and make like a split decision with regards to which avenue to take.
All right, thank you.
Can I get that right, that you want to have the ability to run red lights? Is that? Okay, fine. Just checking on that one. I ain't driving around this crowd, let me tell you.
Peter, I voted for A, and the reason I voted for A is that it would get rid of all those damn advertisements from lawyers for the PI cases. If you come to me and I'll be tough on those insurance companies, don't take a quick check. Come to Greason, and we'll get you lots of cash.
Oh, wait a Hendrick the Greek. Okay.
So I chose B, and I do believe and I agree that people are very tied to their vehicles. But but I also believe that the generation coming up is different. So for me, it was the 10 years that was the deciding factor. So do I see cars being self-driving someday? Yeah, it just won't be in 10 years.
Okay. Got another comment. So if we said 20 years, you may have gone a different way.
I chose A more because I think you're going to see it eased into it. It's not going to be a light switch approach where someone's going to say no more driving yourself, but every new vehicle that's going to come out, you're going to start seeing now they parallel park themselves. Now we're just introducing an additional feature, and then in time you've kind of converted the mindset.
Okay. Well, let's move to some of the results from surveys that we've sent out in years past on topics relative to this one. So, will self-driving vehicles be commonplace? What we did send out was self-driving vehicles will be commonplace on the road within the next 10 years. We posted this scenario in 2015. 466 respondents gauged the probability as unlikely, with an average assessment of 3.2. If you've got the bookmarks and you've got the chart in the bottom there. Only the federal system respondents thought the concept had an even 50-50 chance on that. In a related scenario, intermediate sanctions will dominate criminal and traffic. We offered this scenario in 2013 with 233 respondents. Gave it an assessment of likely with an average of 2.1 probability. Limited jurisdiction respondents and Gen Xers were actually slightly more skeptical on this one, with coming in at 2.4 average assessment.
Okay, so we move on to e-tickets.
Number 2, will we be converted totally to e-tickets? We know now that a number of law enforcement agencies have converted to e-tickets. Many of them that will print them in the car and hand you the printed ticket. They're finding that it's cheaper, and they get the tickets to the court computers faster so that there aren't any data entry mistakes. There is not the cost to the court of entering the ticket information, and the fines and fees can start mounting up and be paid faster. The counter trends are that for us to be completely e-tickets, that means every law enforcement entity has to do it. There are a whole bunch of them, and a bunch of them are tiny. And there's cost involved in the equipment and in the training, and a bunch of people where I live don't want to do things differently. We've got 2 brave volunteers for this one, Lori Tyak, Snapshot A, and Obi Lucas, Snapshot B.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lori Tyak, and I'm the Clerk of Court for Environs Township Municipal Court. Trends for electronic tickets began back in 1990 when municipalities started issuing electronic parking tickets. And in the early 2000s, police agencies began writing electronic tickets for traffic violations. Despite the initial startup costs and technical integration issues, electronic ticketing really took off. Several years ago, our police agency converted from handwritten tickets to electronic traffic tickets to improve officer safety and improve the handwritten chicken scratch process to an electronic data transfer from cruisers directly to the clerk's office case management system database. We also receive an image of the ticket. My office now receives electronic tickets within 20 minutes of officers issuing them. Previously, officers often turned in their tickets on or before the court date. This new process also reduces the number of mistakes by officers who assign court dates without checking a calendar to see whether the hearing dates fell on weekends or holidays. I don't know why no one can seem to remember that Labor Day and Memorial Day always occur on a Monday. Anyway, our police agency received grant funds from a nonprofit organization. After a lot of trial and error, we were finally able to get our case management system to accept the electronic ticket. Now, in 2026, our town police, the county sheriff, the state police, and the suburban police departments have converted to electronic tickets. Once the bugs were worked out, it was easy to convince our judges to accept them. Electronic tickets are uploaded to the police agency data systems and the clerk's office case management system within minutes of issuance. Payment by defendants is now possible the same day as tickets are issued. Dismissed tickets are down, revenue is up, and the community and our police officers are safe.
It's Monday, January 5th, 2026. I'm Obi Lucas, Clerk of Courts for the Environs Township Municipal Court. Although some law enforcement agencies around the country have converted to e-tickets, we've realized that it's only feasible in the largest jurisdictions where money is not an issue. Startup costs are high, and many departments nationally have technical problems. Officers can end up spending up to an hour trying to type out a single ticket. The town police department was not really enthusiastic to begin with. The town council recognized the potential for added revenue that e-tickets would bring in, but it wasn't overly interested, and when the council saw the cost estimate to convert, it finally voted no. We're the largest town in the area, so when the suburban police departments heard that our police said no, they followed suit and stayed with handwriting tickets. Nationally, only large urban police departments seem to have made e-tickets work. Lastly, our court's case management system is pretty old, and I'm not sure if we could have successfully converted to accept different types of e-tickets even if we had wanted to. I guess if the Constitution can be written on paper, so can tickets. So my position is If it ain't broke, why fix it?
All right, well, Peter writes most of this, but there is some ad-libbing going on. We're
Obi
going to
did a
turn
great
to
job.
your opportunity to vote again. Just to summarize, Snapshot A, if that's your preference, all law enforcement goes to e-tickets. Same-day e-ticket uploading to courts. You can also have same-day payment once it's uploaded, and vendor base. If there's funding, if there's some revenue there, maybe there's a collaborative with vendors. And then on the other side, Snapshot B is too expensive, too clunky for smaller jurisdictions and law enforcement. Law enforcement is still not sold on the idea, so they're not coming along. And there are some collaboration concerns.
Okay. Now it's time to vote. I think you are there. It all changed, and so you're able to vote. That's kind of weird.
What's that? Well, as I said, I think we're on the bleeding edge of technology, so I'm afraid we may have to Bled out.
revert. Yeah, I think we may have bled out on this one. I think we're going to have to go with a show of hands. It looks so good. Yeah. Yeah, if technology can't work on this thing, we're going to want to know who voted for the e-tickets now. Yeah.
All right. Anyone brave enough to offer that they voted for Snapshot A? Okay, anybody want to further discuss as Peter makes it around with the microphone?
Want to give your opinion?
In Washington, D.C., we already have e-tickets. It's a large jurisdiction, but it's run by DPW. So our ticketing is a little different. It's run by not the courts or not the police, but it's run by the Department of Public Works, and the police still write paper tickets.
Okay.
So we're almost there.
They do have some form of e-ticketing, but what's the percentage of e-tickets versus paper tickets?
We're just number one. I think our services in DC is just we're great for ticketing. So it's a big giant
Okay.
revenue source.
Do you have any information about Maryland or Virginia and the suburban law enforcement agencies? Okay.
Anyone in a small jurisdiction that even as you think if you were still there 10 years, it would be a challenge because of a funding issue, for example? Well, I think they were just getting a sense. Were there some people who voted for B? We saw a lot of, wow, very few.
Tim, why'd you vote for B?
I'm from a smaller limited jurisdiction court in Louisiana, and actually we saw the reverse. They started e-tickets about 4 or 5 years ago with 10 handheld units. They don't use them now. There wasn't a buy-in of ownership from leadership, and the project failed.
So they still own the equipment, but they're just not using them.
Right. Now, I would love to say A. I mean, I believe in the future, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get there.
What was the main reason why they were so skeptical?
Obi, it took them too long to type in the ticket.
Really?
The software wasn't there, but we didn't have the buy-in from leadership, from the police chief and the powers that be.
Is it now poison forever and all time, or are they willing to take another look as the technology slowly improves? Don't know. Okay. Other thoughts? Who voted
Over
for
here.
B? Ah.
I'm from also a small, limited jurisdiction in Texas, and I've worked in 2 different courts, and so I've seen both sides of it, where we use the electronic ticket writers, and now I'm in a court where we don't. But there's some of our officers that are wanting to move into that direction. And we're fortunate where we do have that upper management, that leadership support. But I've seen it on both sides, and so I'm kind of one where I've seen where it works and where it doesn't work. And in our particular court, I don't feel like it's going to work because people think that they go into this idea of that it's going to cut down on all your data entry, it's going to cut down on this, and it's going to cut down on that. But it doesn't. And that's the point that I'm trying to get across to leadership, because they think of it as a way to cut costs in the court because now I don't need this one person. Well, I still need that individual because the processing of the citation after it's in the court does not change. So it's kind of, you're looking at it they're looking at it in this vacuum, but that's really not the case, because it is not just the citation when it comes in, it is the processing that takes place after that. So
was the actual writing of the citation more cumbersome or less cumbersome? Did you talk to law enforcement, the police on the road?
Yes, we've talked to law enforcement, and actually we went out and kind of did we gathered some data and timed them. How long does it take you to write this ticket, and how long does it take for you to input this ticket? And we had some officers that are more experienced with the electronic ticket writers because they came from other jurisdictions, and they're just like, you know what, it takes me about the same amount of time to do the same task. So it wasn't a savings for the officers on as far as their time goes, you know. So, and I'm looking at it from a processing standpoint. Yes, it's great for you guys if it's going to take you less time, but it's not going to impact my staff as it's impacting the police department.
What you said, that your process has actually got more cumbersome and took longer?
Well, it didn't change it. Just because it's an electronic ticket doesn't mean that it's going to cut down on it cut down on the court's time. So if you're going to look at this, you have to look at it on both sides and how everyone is going to be impacted by the change. Not just this is only going to benefit the police department. Well, it may benefit them in some aspects, but looking at it from a court standpoint, it's not going to really affect us that much. And I know someone made a mention of it's going to increase revenue. Well, they'll be able to pay quicker. Well, you still have to take that human factor into it. Either people are going to pay or they're not. So you can't, and that's what I try to get people to understand. You can't say, oh yeah, well, if they're here if they get the ticket this day, they're going to come in and pay the same day. Well, not necessarily, because I've seen it on both sides.
Coming from a larger, a very large court, probably about $700,000 or 700,000 cases a year, we are wanting to expand it simply because it's the docket imaging that we don't. It's one less thing we're ever going to have to image.
So for you in a larger jurisdiction, there's an actual cost savings and a process savings. So okay.
Anybody have a success story on a e-filing? You want to catch one more before?
Sure.
So I would highly recommend it. The difficulty is getting the buy-in, but they are already using it for warrants. We have electronic warrants, not in all cases, but it probably was able to transfer probably 15 people to other positions. Granted, we also got e-pay. So literally, if you do that for a large percentage, you've gotten the human element out of it. So, and it's real-time entry in terms of it, once it goes in the system, it real time goes over into the court. Not that it can be, but if they pay right, then it can be taken care of.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment. So it can be done, but all the ingredients have to be there. Leadership has to have, you have to have buy-in from law enforcement in the court, and it has to feed.
So in our instance, the courts are processing their tickets, so we force the buy-in. Because they want the revenue, their revenue goes back to their municipality. So if the courts, and it was over time and done in a fair way to give them time, and then there was help with paying for the equipment. But in most police agencies, most of them now have some access to technology, computer, laptop, something, because that's how they do a lot of their business. So it was just hooking into that. And we have an old mainframe system that supports this. So it was done without a new system.
Okay. Up here.
I'm getting my steps in today.
In Ohio, actually in our jurisdiction, specifically in Franklin County, Ohio, Municipal Court in Franklin County, we are about to be involved in a pilot program with the Ohio Highway Patrol. And what they are doing is, or they have developed an e-ticket application that they are offering to any other law enforcement agency who wishes to participate in it at no cost. And there's grant dollars that are available for the equipment that's necessary to implement an e-ticket program at every level of government in Ohio. So they're trying to address the cost objective that some people might have by following that model. As far as whether or not all law enforcement agencies will go to an e-ticket or all jurisdictions will go to an e-ticket solution, I think it's probably going to go in that direction because it's a question of business. The vendors, while they're targeting initially larger jurisdictions, there's also profit opportunities for the smaller jurisdictions. So they will work out ways to address the difficulties that smaller jurisdictions may face to develop a product that is, sized, if you will, for their needs. So I believe ultimately every objection that or every reason that a smaller jurisdiction may not be able to implement an e-filing or e-ticketing solution will be overcome because it's a business opportunity.
Okay, thanks. Anything, Peter, before we move to the survey results?
No, I think any other last comments? Okay.
All right, now you're going to start learning the routine here. We're going on to the survey results. Law enforcement moves to e-tickets. We did put some scenarios out there, and we have one in our current survey that we're still receiving responses for. But so far, the assessment is highly likely, with over 340 respondents giving it an average of 1.5 across the board, with limited jurisdiction, general jurisdiction, AOCs, and federal courts all coming in about the same at 1.5. And then a related scenario we presented in 2014, almost all courts use e-filing. Respondents also assess this as highly likely, again at 1.5. And then fine and fee collections will centralize was in our 2013 survey. 212 respondents gave it a 2.1 average. Millennials thought it was actually highly likely at 1.8 as an average. And then we also sent something out, not quite on the same line, but we said that paper money disappears in the next 10 years. We wanted our survey participants to take a look at that one. It got a likely with 2.5 average, and interestingly, millennials actually thought it would be unlikely at 3.0.
Yeah, we were a little bit surprised that the millennials, the one that think paper money ain't going away anytime soon. You think they would be the ones that would be more wedded to their to the debit cards. Fine and fees collection centralizing also we thought that was pretty interesting in that they thought that it was at least likely, not highly likely, that the fine and fee collection may start to go regional or maybe even statewide. I think a number of states already have functions about that. I know in Arizona we have the FAIR system, which enhances fine collection and also tax on holds on state income tax refunds. So, okay.
Our third question has to do with the adoption of vendor-based case management systems. And the scenario is that all courts within 10 years have converted to vendor-supported case management systems. And the reasons are that to think that that would be the case is that the vendor-based systems get more sophisticated. They are less expensive than homegrown. The courts can see what they're getting before they invest in it. The courts don't have to worry about recruiting and retaining their own IT staff in an increasingly competitive environment where we continue to have budget problems. But the reasons that is not going to happen is that there are still a lot of courts that have their own homegrown systems. They like them. They don't have to pay vendors for changing their system. They don't have to wait in line to get their changes made. And for the judges and the court staff say, we don't serve technology, so technology serves us. And so we insist that we have IT systems that mirror our way of doing things. We're not going to change just because Tyler says that we're supposed to do it another way. We have snapshot A from Christy Combs, and Claire Lydiard will give the rebuttal for snapshot B.
We've had some last-minute stand-ins, so excellent. Thank you. Okay.
It's Monday, January 5th, 2026. I'm Sarah Couture, the General Jurisdiction Circuit Court Administrator. Our court used to maintain its own in-house automated case management system. By 2020, our computer system needed a complete refresh. We estimated that it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and take years to complete. Added to that, we couldn't offer salaries high enough to hire the best programmers and business analysts. Like many courts nationally, we followed the trend and contracted with a vendor-based case management system. Looking at several off-the-shelf systems, we settled on the Tribunal 5000, which about 24 other courts around the country are using. The good news is that the Tribunal 5000 is a lot less expensive to run, and it uses industry standard links to other systems, which makes it easier to transfer and receive data to other agencies like state police, DMV, and even our Department of Revenue to put holds on tax refunds. The downside? It is difficult and expensive to modify the system if it isn't something the vendor has already installed. As a result, to avoid paying steep development costs, we often change our processes. Overall, however, the Tribunal 5000 works well.
It's Monday, January 5th, 2026. I'm Claire, my middle name, the General Jurisdiction Circuit Court Administrator. A number of courts nationally converted from their own case management systems to off-the-shelf systems managed by national vendors. Although this trend has been popular, it never became universal. Many courts, like us, continue to use our own in-house system. Despite the fact that our case management system needs a complete refresh, which we plan to do in stages over a number of years, we still value the autonomy that running our own system gives us. Yes, hiring programmers and business analysts is a struggle. The good news is that when our court decides we want to change the system, we do it. A couple of years back, we wanted proposed orders filed through our e-filing system to be updatable, e.g. like in Word. We identified the document codes, set our programmers to work, and within 2 years, we had modified our system. Of course, by the time the conversion was in production, most judges had already created workarounds. Admittedly, our system is out of date, but it's our system and we love it.
Okay, thank you both. Here, I'll take it. All right, to summarize, if your preference is the first scenario, vendor systems are less expensive than in-house systems. Vendor systems offer more standardized links and less individualization. Or snapshot B, in-house systems are easy to modify, more expensive to maintain and support, and more difficult to link to other systems. Let's see if we can get it to work this time.
Okay, what we're going to do is have everybody at once click their heels and say, I love technology, I love technology, I love technology. Please. Oh, look at that. I think you should be able to vote. Hey, 100%.
2 out of 3.
I like the dynamic nature of these bargains. Come on, B, come on, B.
Well,
Come on,
this one's-
Seabiscuit.
Well, actually, it's a bit closer than the others have been.
It is, yeah. Okay. Come on, come on, come on. Well, we'll leave it open as the discussion ensues, and we will continue to watch it. Sort of like looking at the Dow, huh?
Well, this is the Brexit vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Well, you shouldn't be embarrassed because half the room thinks like you do if you weigh in on one side or the other. So anybody want to weigh in as to A? If you have to have one thing working, right?
Just yell it out. I don't think it's working.
Okay, so although I was snapshotting, I actually voted for B because I come from a court. We have our own system that is developed. We have developers that are contracted through a technology company, and the system is actually used by other jurisdictions, a few other jurisdictions in Florida. So when there's changes, we do.
I'm paying attention.
Yeah, no, we do. We go to the developers, and there's a list, and they work off of, the importance. But I just think that the way we're able to have them change that, it may take some time because they do it on a level of importance. There's a committee of judges
Okay.
and other people who they categorize the importance of a change. I just think that ability to do that I don't see us going to like a Tyler. I mean, we use Odyssey from Tyler, but we have our own case management system. It does talk to Odyssey. You can pull the images. So
Okay.
So for document management, but the case management, you still have your.
It's one. Document management, our clerk's office uses Odyssey. Our case management system pulls from there. We have access to both systems.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
I'm going to surprise you. I actually wrote our own case management system for my court. Huh? No. No. But actually, I had to vote for B because our biggest problem in Louisiana is we are non-unified. My struggles with the state is just to try to get them to standardize data. Until I do that, A's out of the question.
Yeah. There's someone else over here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm from New Jersey. Now, technically, I would like the A, but I live in a B world. Okay, we build it. We don't have separate developers. We believe that we can hire the people in, and it's worked for a while. But we also have some systems that we've gone out, and what we also have is the fact that the vendors that are producing something for us are also vendors that are producing things, and as much as they say customizable, customizable comes with a price every time you want to customize. So although we bought vendors that started out, as we've progressed and needed, once that contract goes, it's kind of like when you get the warranty on your car or your washing machine. It's kind of out. So then we have to create workarounds, and then we go back to let's build it on the inside. So it would be lovely if A would work, but the reality of it is it still comes with some consequences that you can't solve either.
Sounds like the way we displayed the scenarios as they were read were pretty much like real life then.
Holy cow, we got one that's spot on. Good for us.
Peter, find out what Casey thinks on this one.
We want your honest opinion.
So I'm actually torn between A and B because our e-filing system that's statewide is vended out, and we do use Tyler's product for that. And so I know that there are times that we have to stand in line for what we're asking for, but that's the price we pay. Obviously, on the flip side, on the B side, one of my responsibilities is running the appellate case management system for the 14 appellate courts, 16 courts of appeals, 2 high courts and the 14 intermediate courts, and that's all homegrown. And we don't use Odyssey, so there's flip sides. Yes, we can make our changes now, but because of our IT staff and their level of expertise that we can afford to pay at the state level and the government, there's only so much that we can do and so fast, whereas the vendors have a better R&D staff than we do. But you know, on the flip side, it's a lot cheaper to run appellate case management than it is to run e-filing.
Let me ask you 2 questions about that. The first question is, we often hear maybe a lament when you get an IT candidate for a programmer analyst come in, and you know, he or she looks really good, and they say, you know, I just talked to Intel last week, and they're offering me about $30,000 a year more than you're even starting. Can't do it. Is this a common problem?
I would say for us, it's even worse than that. Because, I mean, and working in Austin, Texas, we have Dell, we have Intel, we have Google, we have a lot of high-tech companies. So off the top, the people that are in it for the money, they're already working for them. They would never think of working for the government. What we typically see is people will go chase after the money, and then they'll realize working for the Dells and the Intels, you get a lot of money, but you're working from 8 a.m. to midnight, Monday through Saturday, and you get a day off, and then you're doing it again. And so they'll make their money and decide, you know what, maybe I want to spend more time with my family. Maybe I want to do those other kinds of things. So, but the issue that we have is even working from the government within 100 feet of my building, there are many programmer positions open. And so they can earn $20,000 more working for another executive branch agency that's less than a walk away from our offices doing the same thing. The issue that we have is now we're banking on the coolness of the court, that they want to work for the courts. And I have to say, our agency is very cool, and so, but the reality is, you know, that only goes so far for people to where, you know, we're probably about $25,000, maybe $30,000 cool, but when you get into the $40,000, $50,000, we're not that cool.
Still, you heard it here first, folks. We're the cool branch, and we're the nice people. We'll let you see your family once in a while.
Anyone else with a burning comment before we go to the survey results?
I just want to make a kind of a lone wolf comment here. I represent a juvenile court, and it's in a decentralized state. And juvenile courts really pose a unique problem, perhaps, with vendors, because everything's built for the adult system. And juvenile courts tend to track different kinds of information. They track many similar kinds of information, but they are all offender-driven. And so as a consequence, to find a vendor who can provide us with a really robust case management system is very challenging. We ended up building our own back in 2003 and have continued to work with a software company. But there's only 2 that I know of in the entire nation that really is built for a juvenile court and really translates also, you know, the common elements the adult systems have. And so we kind of have a separate kind of issue.
Thank you. Thanks. All right, we're probably fast running out of time. So let's, Peter, if you want to go to some of what we sent out to our survey takers. In 2015, courts will turn to vendor-based case management systems. It was assessed as likely at 2.1. Federal respondents assessed it only as having a 50-50 chance, but remember, they've got PACER and CM-ECF of their own, so that's probably why they may have weighed in that way. And then limited jurisdiction respondents said it was highly likely with 1.8. And then vendor-based case management systems will come to determine court processes. This was sent out in our current survey. We're still accepting responses, but so far the assessment looks like it's probably 50-50 with a 2.7 average. Federal respondents, again, maybe because they have their own system, are saying that's unlikely at about 3.0. And courts will push for industry standards to mitigate the vendor-based systems. The core of this scenario is in our current survey, it's in our current survey, and this will be pushed out with safeguards so that a court never receives that dreaded email message that the vendor will no longer support the court's version of their case management system. So far, the assessment is at 50-50 chance of occurring at 2.5. Limited jurisdiction respondents are slightly more skeptical at 2.6. And lastly, long-term electronic records and data retention standards will be established. You may have, if you were at last year's NACM, Marcus Rankensmeyer and Niall Ron presented this topic. And in our current survey, the average assessment is so far is highly likely at 1.8 average, pretty much across all case types.
So, okay, well, I think that's a wrap. We really appreciate your time. Thanks for sticking here with us with the technology. We want to say in conclusion, though, change is certainly coming upon us, and I think we can't just wait for our retirement to let the next generation work on it. We do have two things. One is change often comes in an area we least expect it, and it comes from left field. And we've got a video before you leave. Your favorite astronomer, Neil deGrasse Tyson. Except he's not speaking. We intentionally made him much thinner. So, anyway, we do appreciate it. Yeah. Anyway.
Some of my favorite big things are the accumulation of little things, like the unending role of composite materials in our lives, or the steady growth and power of the internet. More often than not, the next big thing takes you by surprise. You don't see it coming, you don't know or believe you need it. Then the inevitable happens. You can't live without it.
So thank you very much. Sign up for that sign-up sheet if you would like us to send you the survey. It's still active. We'd also like to see all of our brave volunteers to come up because we have a thank you gift for you.